Perfect. So, hi everyone. I'm Nala. Thanks for joining our webinar hosted by Blay Coin, and we're part of the wider Blackout UK Collective. So, this session is part two of, I guess, an unexpected series, Living with Miss Rona. So, this time we've got some very special guests, and we'll be discussing preparing for the next phase. So people are already being called back into work, businesses are back up and running. So we thought it would be a good idea to just share our thoughts, considering things like what we should be planning, and how we can prepare to go back to some sort of normality in a way that is safe for us, while obviously thinking about our finances, our careers and our well-being. So just to introduce the team that put the session together, we're Blay Coin. The name is a play on the idea of the pink pound, which describes the LGBT spending power. So we like to use Blay Coin to refer to our spending power as Black queer people. And we focus our initiatives on wealth generation, career development, and financial well-being. So we think it's important because, you know, we face all kinds of barriers in all of these areas as Black queer men. And so hopefully we'll be able to discuss some really key things that have been on our minds, and some positive stories about what others have been doing. So our plan for the call is to get into some panel questions, taking us to about 2:40 or 3:40, and then 10-minute Q&A / open discussion, followed by some closing thoughts and announcements from Blackout. And so, you know, this session is being recorded and will be posted to the Blackout Hub, which is the app that you can all download, and also it will be posted to YouTube. If you've got any questions throughout, just add them to the chat and we'll try to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. Also, we really like to see everyone's beautiful faces. So if you're happy to do so, please switch on your video so that we can see you all. Cool. So if we get on to introducing our wonderful panel, we are still waiting for one of the speakers to join us who will be running a bit late, but we'll be able to introduce him as he joins. So we want to get to know you a bit. So please tell us who you are and also what your Corona Jam has been. So your Corona Jam is that tune that you've had on repeat during lockdown, that's helped you get through this trying time. Maybe we should go to Geoffrey first.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Geoffrey Williams. I do lots of different things. So I am currently a diversity and inclusion specialist, but I also make short films, do a little bit of writing, and also run a non-profit called Rocking Your Teens that works with young kids between the ages of 13 and 15 to help them think about their careers and how they manage their mental well-being now more than ever, but also overall in their careers and their aspirations. And just like this session today, I'm doing a session with the kids this week, Thursday on the 21st of May between 4 and 5. And if you follow me on any social media platforms, you'll be able to find the details for that. So what is my coronavirus jam? I think there's been lots of tunes, but I think the one that I kind of constantly go to at the moment is tracked by an artist that I used to work with called Terry Walker. You can see her image in the background actually there. It's called This Is My Time. And effectively, unfortunately, at the top of the year, my grandmother died. And it was kind of a hard thing to deal with. And then obviously then we all went into lockdown. So I've just kind of been focused on kind of, I guess, going through a reinvention with her not being around, and also a few other people that I've lost due to COVID, but also kind of reminding myself that this is my time and I can do whatever I need to do and stay focused on my goals and ambitions. So yeah, this is my time. Terry Walker.
Amazing. Thank you, Geoffrey. And Dennis?
Hi, everyone. My name's Dennis Carney. What can I tell you about me? Well, I've been around the scene for a long time. I think back in the 80s, I was the chair of the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre project. Probably a lot of you haven't heard of that organisation, but I'll tell you now, if it wasn't for BLGC, I don't think I would be stood here today, and I'm quite sure that Blackout probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the existence of the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre all those years ago. Yeah, so I worked for LGBT mental health charity for about 10, 12 years, running personal development workshops for gay, bi, queer men. And I think I learned a lot through that work about mental health and well-being, specifically around LGBT communities. And I think that's enough about me.
Oh, you haven't shared your Corona jam.
Oh, my Corona jam. Oh, it's by a group called Questlife, and it's called Can't Stop. It's a really cool house number, and I love it. Every time I hear it, I just want to dance.
Perfect. And Romeo, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, cool. Do you want to introduce yourself as well as the host?
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out to of your Sunday afternoon to be on this call. Apologies, Kayus and I was actually in another workshop which he's hosting and he's running late, so he'll be joining us shortly. So I'm Romeo Fs, and I'm part of the Blay Collective, and I will be your host. The other members of the Blay Collective, it's Nala who actually opened up. Then we have Francis. Francis, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello, hi everyone.
Yeah, so that's Francis. And then we have Nzube. Are you around? I did see.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. You're right. So I'm just going to jump straight in because we're running behind time. And so this is going to be a discussion, and as Nala said, a few minutes for each of the members of the panel to answer questions that we're going to pose to them, and then we'll open up for some Q&A. You can actually, while the panelists are actually speaking, you can actually use the chat box to put any questions that you might have, and then we will then call them out. So. The topic is preparing for the next phase or for the comeback. So for the panelists, I would say, what particular challenges do you think we can expect from this this kind of return, or quote unquote return to the new normal? If I can start with you, Geoffrey.
I think the challenges are going to show up in a number of ways. I think it's going to impact people's willingness to actually leave their houses currently. And I guess, you know, talking to my peers and friends, there are people that are anxious about the idea of having to go outside. I think organizations are also going to have to think about how they actually stagger people's returns. So a friend of mine who works in Copenhagen, he's been back at work for the last 2 weeks, and the way their organization is working is he's now in Group A. And he goes in on Monday and Thursdays, and then everyone else goes in different dates. And I think a lot more organizations are going to have to work in that pattern, or think about how they screen and space out their offices as well. So effectively, you're not going to have a whole team back. You're going to have 2 or 3 people from that team. And I think, you know, line managers, you know, going into my D&I world, are going to have to think about how much they know about these people, and how are they going to make sure that their teams are still deliver what their organizations need. So that's people that like each other together, or you know, making sure that the team understand what they're working on and how their different styles and qualities can be brought together to then deliver on an objective. So I think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be interesting, but I do think it's going to be very much a human approach, of people having to really think about their employees more and how much they know about them.
Okay, all right. And Dennis?
Yeah, a lot of people are going to find it hard going back to this new normal. But one thing I will say is that I think we underestimate sometimes the capacity of humans and their resilience in times like this. And I think that's one of the things I hold on to in terms of thinking about a future beyond this pandemic. I will say, though, that I think as well, going back into the big bad world, so to speak, I think can be challenging for a lot of people, especially if they've been self-isolating.
Sorry, Dennis, we can hardly hear you, so I'm not sure if you can.
Oh, wow, I wonder why that is. That's strange, never had that before. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better. And guys, can you mute yourself if you're not muted, please? We're hearing some noise in the background from something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can be overwhelming, the idea of going back into the big bad world, especially if you've been isolating for the last kind of month. And I would say that it's not all doom and gloom. I think there will be opportunities out of this, and maybe we can explore some of that later on in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on something which is which I think a lot of people are struggling with. I know for one that I'm struggling with this whole notion. And I mean, what are some of the things you think? And Dennis, I'm coming back to you first, and then Geoffrey. What are some of the things that you think we can do to safeguard our mental state, our mental well-being, going back into this? Into a situation that we don't know what it looks like, and it can be just scary. I can talk for myself, like, you know, business wise, I'm not sure what's going to look like, work wise, traveling. It's just scary. How can we protect our mental state and well-being in this state of uncertainty?
Yeah, well, I think maybe you know, following the basics, you know, so good diet, getting plenty of exercise if you can, and getting plenty of rest. I watched a TED Talk by Arianna Huffington from the Huffington Post, and she did a TED Talk on the importance of sleep. And ever since I've watched that, my relationship to sleep has completely changed, because I now see its value in terms of the importance of being able to maintain good mental health and well-being requires good rest and sleep.
Is that available on TED, on YouTube?
It's available on TED.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, guys, we'll try and circulate that link. And it's yeah, I'm from the Huffington Post. Yes, okay, yeah.
So I think those three basic things, you know, sleep, exercise, good diet. I mean, if you're eating junk food every day, day in, day out, I'm imagining that's not going to help you feel very good about yourself. So anything you can do to maintain a kind of positive outlook. And so one thing I would say around that is I read a piece of graffiti on a bus shelter in Scotland about 15 years ago, and it goes like this: the past is history, the future is a mystery, only now is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Or, so, you know, another way of looking at this, you know, you can't change the past, you can't predict the future, so focus on the here and now. That's something that we've got control over. And one thing I've noticed about myself is that if I tend to focus on things that happened in my past, I end up feeling depressed. Don't normally feel happy. And if I focus on the future, then I tend to notice that I feel really anxious. You know, I control the future, I can't predict it, you know. I feel a bit powerless when I think about the future often. But one thing I do have control over is what is happening right now in this very moment. Am I doing something that is supporting me, helping me? Is it helping me to feel positive, feel good about being a Black queer man? If it's not, then maybe I need to be doing something else in this very moment. So to focus on the here and the now, I think is really helpful in terms of thinking about how we go forward in the big bad world. Okay,
all right. I'll jump back to that to some things you mentioned there. But Geoffrey, any suggestions from you in terms of what individuals should be doing to kind of you know, safeguard our mental states, especially from the standpoint of those of us going back into a place of work. and knowing that you know, I mean, I know I'm coming to you because I know you're also an HR professional who would have to deal with this in large companies that usually have open plan working space and all of that. You know what I mean? You know, what do we need to do to kind of safeguard our mental state going back into that kind of environment?
So I think I definitely agree with what Dennis said around your diet and sleep and taking breaks. I think something that you can do personally is remove yourself from certain social medias as well. So if you're in WhatsApp groups, maybe take a break from some of those. If it's stressing you out, the kind of constant kind of invasion of your privacy, I'd say take a step back from that. I think in relation to businesses, they will have a lot of policies that will outline what they're going to do. And I'd say I would advise everybody to take the time to read them. Also think about, does your organization have a union? And what is the union saying about returning back to work? And how have you engaged with them in the past? And maybe you might need to think about changing your relationship with the union. So if you're not a member, become a member, because as they start to look at returning to work and bargaining power and making decisions about the safety of the actual space that you're going to work in, the union will have a say, and making sure that your voice is heard within that, I think is paramount. I think also, you know, making sure that your line manager understands how you're feeling. So if it's stressing you out, speak up, don't keep it to yourself. I think we as Black men sometimes feel like we have to stay strong about everything. And there is that need for us just to be open and say, do you know something? The fact of coming back to work every day is stressing me out. I've worked from home in this format for the last 8 weeks. So can I stick with that? And I can only show up 2 days a week because I have to get on the tube, and that adds an extra level of anxiousness or whatever it might be. I think it's that piece of sharing what you're going through with your line manager and the HR teams. I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. So it's remembering that fact and knowing that, you know, as Dennis said, we're in the present and there's the future, and it's going to look hopefully something better and something exciting, and it's kind of moving towards that in the right way. And really, you know, I definitely just agree with speaking up, understanding what your organization is doing, knowing if you have a union, and aligning yourself to that to kind of benefit from some of the decisions they'll make.
So Geoffrey,
sorry, Romeo?
Yes?
Yeah, sorry, before we proceed, I just wanted to mention Kayus has joined us.
Oh, hi, Kayus. How are you?
Guys, I'm well, and I must apologize for joining late. I don't know what happened to my Zoom. I must borrow yours, Francis, because something must have happened. I don't really know if it was me or if it was overall Zoom technology. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see you all. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And yeah, just wanted to apologize for my late entry.
All right, I did apologize for you earlier, Kayus. So since you're here, we've started the discussion. We've pretty much been having a chat regarding you know, well-being in the workplace, and also what are some of the particular challenges you think we'll expect going back to the new normal. But before I jump to you with a question, Kayus, throwing you straight in the deep end, Geoffrey, just to follow up on the point you were making, what do you think employers and businesses, or in what ways do you think they need to adapt to help to facilitate this this return into the place of work? Because that's going to be very key.
I think you can see echoes of what they're going to have to do happening. So I don't know if you saw that Twitter, everyone's allowed to work from home forever. They don't have to go back into the office if they don't want to. And I think Facebook have had the same message up until the start of next year. So I think it's going to be the organizations looking at who do they actually need to come into the office and how do they manage that return. Also thinking about the actual space itself. So do they need to reconfigure it and set it up in a slightly different way? Also investing in technology. So at the moment, everybody's using, you know, Teams, Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeetings. How can they build their infrastructure so they're not getting hacked or anything negative? So there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes technology work that organizations are going to have to do. And I think also, I think a point I made earlier, those people that are actually managing teams, line managers, they're really going to have to get to know their teams so that they are able to understand who's actually going to come into the office and how far people are from each location. What does that mean for their travel? And kind of have a bit of humanity and understand that actually me asking someone to come in from Slough to Central London may not be the best use of their time.
Yeah.
If I have someone that's close to the office, they may be able to come in more often. I think also looking at the types of work that people are doing. So if someone's in a, kind of customer facing role, how often are they interacting with the customers? How much downtime are we giving them? How are we able to scan and test them for the virus itself? Those kind of things are where I guess businesses will have to take a stock, have to invest some money and utilize the things they already have in place. So whether that's employee assistance programs, all those kind of different things will have to come out and play.
Right. Okay. Kayus, one of the questions we asked both Dennis and Geoffrey was, which I'm going to throw to you, is, what particular challenges do you think we can expect from going back into this quote unquote new normal? Anything that you can think of that you think we need to be kind of looking out for?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it really depends on where you sit and sort of your role, I suppose, in the overall grand scheme of things in the economy. As previously mentioned, lots of employers have come to the realization that people can work remotely in many cases, but that people have all sorts of challenges and particular arrangements that now have to be taken into consideration in terms of their productivity. So I think going back into normality will be quite interesting, because I don't think anybody knows what that's going to look like in the future. Childcare arrangements, travel into the office, as previously mentioned. Even when it comes down to set up in offices, I've heard lots of places talk about having to rethink open plan spaces and people getting onto lifts and things of that nature. There's a lot of thought that's going to have to go into how people will re-enter the workforce and the economy coming back to life. I think that we will be faced with challenges and opportunities about how to restart the economy and what that looks like. What kinds of new businesses, what kinds of new ventures will need to be in place in the post-corona world to support what's happened to all of us in many different ways. And I think it's going to need to be a real coordination and collaboration between various parties to figure that out, because no one group has the answer. As we've seen, governments have struggled with this, the corporate sector has struggled to really come to terms with how to govern, how to enforce rules, what new commercial opportunities look like. There's just a lot of things that will need to be rethought and revisited.
Which leads me into into this question in terms of what should individuals be doing to safeguard themselves financially, going into this period, knowing the impact that this has had on us, over the past couple of months.
Yeah.
So, it's almost predictable that a similar situation could happen, whether or not it's with coronavirus or something else. So, I think we need to we should start, and a lot of us have been affected, both our businesses and personal savings around our finances. What are some of the things that we should start doing to building that resilience and make sure that if this happens again, we're not caught completely on the back foot?
Yeah. You are so right. I heard somebody say recently, and you guys may have heard this as well, that this is a crisis in many forms. Obviously, it's been a healthcare crisis, but following along is going to be an economic situation, and we will all be impacted by it. And it may be for a protracted period of time. Nobody knows how long it's going to take for the world to start growing again. We've talked a lot about wellness and physical well-being, because that's been our immediate priority. But looking after your financial well-being is going to be so critically important right now and forevermore, really. And I hope this period forces people to really think about how they approach their personal finances. Do you have goals and plans when it comes to your money, or are you sort of kind of, rolling the dice and seeing how things go? What's your discipline been like? What are some of the ways that the stressful situations impact how you deal with your money? Do you kind of panic spend, or do you hoard? I think looking after your financial well-being is the first thing, and that really means figuring out, do you have plans in place, right?
Yeah.
An emergency savings fund. I've said this so many times, and people are probably tired of hearing me and other people say it, but make this a priority. Make an emergency savings fund a priority, whether it's 3 months worth of your living expenses or even more. As much as possible, try to put something in place, because if you're earning now, you have the resources to do this, and we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how the economies of the world are going to change, and you want to give yourself a buffer. And of course, putting an emergency fund in place means you got to know what your living expenses look like. So having a budget, going back to my earlier point about financial well-being, critically important.
Yeah.
I would say taking advantage of offers of help is something that we should all be doing, whether you feel like you really, really need it or not. Where lenders and service providers and landlords and others are offering holidays and deferral of payments and things of that nature, take advantage of those things, because we don't know, again, how long this is going to take. We don't know when these types of opportunities are going to come around again. And it's a good time to be looking into those things.
Yeah.
I would caveat that just to say, be really clear and understand, what costs, conditions, any penalties are associated with getting that help, so that you're not in a worse off position on the other side. So just be really clear, but ask for help and take advantage of help.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, go on, Kayus.
No, I was just going to say, I would say, look for ways to supplement your income where possible, and don't be proud of working below your skill set, right? No one's saying this is going to last forever. And if you just need to kind of bridge the gap, make ends meet, look for ways to earn some income, and don't be proud about it.
And I mean, I'm going to give a shameless plug here, but Kayus actually runs a very good masterclass on financial planning and investment. And guys, I have a master's in finance, in corporate finance, and I'm part of that. And I've been learning so much in terms of how to build in that resilience. So I will, I would suggest that, you guys reach out and find out from Kayus if you can join in. I'm pretty sure he'll open the door to let us in. It's been.
I didn't pay Romeo to say that, guys, by the way.
No, he didn't actually. He didn't. Dennis, just jumping back to you from an earlier point you made, which I thought was very, very important. You spoke about the need for positive thinking. And I think one of the biggest things that we've been facing with during this crisis is that everyone keeps looking at the negative stuff, keep talking about the negative impact of this. But, I'm a great believer that, there's always two sides to a coin, right? So, what do you think are some of the positives that have really come out of this whole situation?
Well, I think for me, on a personal level, some of the positives that have come out for me is that I've discovered that I've got some really good friends. And, I think friendship has been really, really important in terms of getting through the last 2 months. So, but I think in terms of friendship, I think one of the key things about friendship, or any relationship really, is communication. And I think one of the things I've noticed in terms of my kind of friendship network is that I've been having some really deep and meaningful conversations with not just my friends, but family members as well. I've been having conversations in a way that I never had prior to the outbreak. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, so talking for me has been really, really important. Yeah. Yeah. And I think so, and whether that means talking to friends, talking to family, or even talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
I think talking and ending the silence around some of the struggles that many people are going through right now is probably a good thing to be doing. And if we can all be talking more and more meaningful going forward, I think that is a definite positive for all of us, really.
Yeah, and especially as Black men, we're always, I think, socialized to think that we need to be tough, we need to be, you know, man up kind of a situation. The talking thing can be very tough, and especially for me, being isolated alone at home for the past 14 weeks, because I've been in isolation longer than most. I found just talking, you know, especially, you know, the four of us in the Blay Collective, you know, we have a weekly call where we just call and vent, and sometimes on the WhatsApp group we're just venting with each other, and we just jump on a call just to kind of support each other. And I found that invaluable, right? Invaluable. Geoffrey, what are some of...
I think one other thing I just want to say in terms of personal experience. I think one of the things that I've set up is I've set up a group for Black men in their 50s.
Oh, yes.
That is as a direct result of the pandemic. It's something that I've been thinking about doing for many years, but because I had the space to think about, well, hold on a minute, I'm talking about doing this for ages, why not do it now?
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and I think one of the things I've learned from that experience is that I'm not the only Black gay 50-something. There were lots and lots and lots of us out there, which was a massive revelation to me. I often see myself as being one of a handful, rather than the fact that within 2 weeks I was able to set up a group.
Geoffrey, just coming back to you as well, what are some of the positives that you have seen, you know, coming out of this whole lockdown situation?
I think for me, it's given me space to think about what I want to do with my life overall. It's given me space to think about how I build my skills and my knowledge. So I've had opportunities to read more and to, you know, watch YouTube channels and to kind of really think about what I'm going to do with my finances or, you know, whatever that might be. And I think it's also given me the space to really kind of reconnect with myself in an interesting way, because it's that piece of, you know, you work in these big organizations and you spend a lot of time focused on what they want, what they need, where's the business going, where do I align myself to that organization, and how does my career then benefit from that? And I think in this space, yes, I've got to work, but it's also having that space to know, actually, what does this mean to me? What's gonna be my change coming out of the COVID impact? And having that realization that actually there's some skills I need to acquire. So how am I now going to acquire those skills? Mm-hmm. Or it kind of, you know, just working on my network more and talking to those people that I do know. And I think that's been the interesting good thing that's come out of this. Yeah, that's kind of where I've kind of landed from being impacted by COVID.
Okay. Kayus, any positives?
Yeah, I was smiling as Jeff was saying that, because I don't know, many of you may have seen this meme on social media about, if you don't emerge from the crisis with a new skill or a new side hustle, you know, you've wasted your time. Which, you know, I don't subscribe to that, because everybody's managing in different ways. I think that, as others have said, you know, just the connectivity, really coming to terms with who I am as an individual, what relationships mean to me, finding the time to reconnect with people again, even though it's in this weird virtual way. But I think really making gestures to demonstrate that relationships are important to me, and using technology to do that has been super positive. And yeah, just kind of a a forced slowdown of my pace of work. You know, we spend so much time busying ourselves and trying to achieve, and I'm very guilty of that, of being super ambitious and wanting to do everything all the time, and coming to realize that that's just not sustainable.
Okay, all right, good. I mean, for me as well, I mean, it's just the whole notion of, you know, just seeing how the environment has just kind of, you know, reclaimed itself, and just being able to just kind of be in a zone where when you go out, when I go walking in the park, you know, I can actually hear the birds and see color and see plants that I never usually see before, which has just been amazing, you know. So that's great. All right, so guys, I'm going to jump straight into some questions coming in, and I have some other questions as well. And one of the questions that came in was, it says, as Black men, we're 4 times more likely to die from coronavirus infection than any other demographic. We also have the double burden of having to wear a mask and seeming threatening to the rest of the public. What tips do you have for us as the lockdown is relaxed? For instance, can we ask for special consideration with our employers or colleagues? So I guess that is the whole notion of, and maybe Geoffrey, I'll go to you since you're the DNI here, right? The whole notion of, yeah, you know, there are already stereotypes against Black men wearing hoodie. Now we add a mask to it, you know, makes us looking, you know, even more. I had an occasion where I was out running at 5:30 in the morning, and I ran around a corner in Crystal Palace and came upon this older white lady, and she just, I had my hoodie on and my mask, and she just screamed and said, "Get away, get away," you know, and I just had to laugh. But, you know, if it was a corona, I would probably thought, you know, what a racist SOB. But I didn't think that right away. I just thought, okay, she's just protecting herself because she's vulnerable. But, you know, how can we deal with this new added burden to us as Black men?
That is a how long is a piece of string type question, I guess. There's so many layers to that. I think in regards to asking your organization for considerations, if that's what you feel you need, ask. Don't be afraid to ask. I think definitely do ask the question. I think in regards to how society sees us and, you know, how having to wear a mask is going to impact us, I feel like it's a time to be selfish and to think about our well-being and our health. So effectively, you need to wear it. If there's a moment where you feel, I don't know, you need to uncover your face so a camera can see you, I don't know, do that. But I don't think that's a burden that in this instance you should be taking on as your own personal burden to worry about. You should exist, look after your health, and do what you need to do. I don't think there's anything more that we could say or do in that instance or go beyond that. But I definitely feel like if you have a request of your workplace, ask them for a you know, mitigating circumstances to either work from home or do whatever you need to do. But I don't think it's your place to wear that burden.
Dennis, I see you nodding. You have a comment to come in on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I kind of understand the dynamic around white people stereotyping Black men as being violent and dangerous. And I have a right to protect my health and protect the health of others. And that's what I tell myself when I walk down the street with my mask. And if you can't deal with it, then you can't deal with it. That's not my issue. What my issue is about protecting myself and protecting other people around me.
Yeah. Someone just typed in the chat that we just need to be fabulous and make our glasses with glitter.
I totally second that.
Kayus, one other question that came in was, you spoke about the whole notion that coming out of this, we should come out, I think you said, you know, with some kind of business or something like that. And one of the question was, what are some business ideas you would think, or what areas should people be focusing on in terms of starting up a new business in this climate?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question that's on a lot of people's minds. I think that there's different ways to approach this. One way is to think about businesses that are recession-proof. And you know, one thing I would say is in anything, playing to your strengths and the skills that you already have is a must. And as mentioned earlier, using the time that we have to learn new skills is incredibly powerful. So, thinking about businesses that perhaps may not be as affected by recession is one way to kind of think about this. I also want to put this in the framework or the frame of mind of what could you be doing now, and then what could you be doing as far as when we emerge from lockdown, right? So right now, business opportunities that don't require human physical contact, things that are very much supported by online, so online training and coaching and consulting. Many of us, people on this call and others, have skills that other people want and need. And figuring out how to deliver those skills online is really the way of the future. Even if you think beyond coronavirus and everything that's happening with this pandemic, online education is an incredibly dynamic industry that is just growing by leaps and bounds. So that's one area. Fitness and well-being obviously is a really important one. Content creation, supporting companies as well. I think, I work for a very large organization that has a lot of resources to do with things like IT and HR and things of that nature. But there are many mid-sized and small companies that don't have those resources and look to outsource. So supporting those entities in dealing with the current situation, I think, is a great place to look for potential businesses to start. Coming out of the lockdown is where I think there is fantastic opportunity. And you said this earlier, Romeo, and I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of positives that we could potentially see coming out of this period. And I want people to think about the areas where people have complained or found services to be lacking. Mm-hmm. That's where I think there's a lot of opportunity. So one obvious one is cleaning services. Yeah, it doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound like something that you necessarily want to do. But people now are going to be freaked out about surfaces and making sure that things are clean. Yeah. And if you have a great cleaning service, imagine how in demand you would be coming out of this lockdown. Because I think people's minds have changed now, right? We're going to be looking at everybody skeptically. Any little sniffle or cough that somebody has, we think they're trying to infect us, right? It's irrational, but it's human nature, and humans, spend money irrationally a lot of times. Supporting vulnerable people, children, older people, that's another area I think where there's a lot of business opportunity, because we're seeing our services strained because we just haven't had to deal with the kind of support that vulnerable groups need. So if you have a business idea that can help older people with, I don't know, deliveries or checking in on them or medical services, same thing with children, I think that's going to be really important. Mental health and well-being services, we aren't speaking about it because we don't know what's going to happen yet, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who will need help dealing with this, right? I think the post-traumatic stress, I hope that doesn't sound too dramatic, but I think, if you think about how you've dealt with this, and I can think about myself, if you have a service or an expertise that helps people to really make sense of this period and to work through the issues of instability and uncertainty and fear, I think that's another area where there's business opportunity.
Okay, good, great.
I want to add one as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to come to you, Geoffrey, with
cool.
one question. So, so guys, Kayus's details are in the chat as well. But Geoffrey, while you're going to be responding to that, another question that came up was, do you have any advice for those who may be looking for work during this time? So people who have been made redundant, etc. So if you can just combine both of the responses there.
So I didn't say Kayus' point about finding recession-proof jobs. Obviously, funeral services. I know that sounds morbid, but that is the one that literally, if we all started a funeral home, we'd be living good. Like, there's opportunities there. And it's not that expensive to get a license either.
Oh, really?
I've been Googling, I looked into it. I was a little bit like, oh, what am I going to do? So advice for people that are looking for work, effectively, don't stop. Just because, we're in a funny moment at the moment, don't stop looking for the role. Keep applying for things that you see in the market, talking to your network, thinking about offering consultancy services. So don't just go, I'm looking for a full-time role. Look at interim opportunities or roles where you're just going to go in and deliver a service for a couple of days, because it's about maintaining your CV and your, I guess, hireability. And really kind of also look at how you're telling your narrative. So how you're using your LinkedIn and all of your social media platforms to tell your journey to date, and also what you're going to do, how does that align to your end goal? So a very wise man once told me, Geoffrey, when you're thinking about your career, don't think about where you're sitting right now. Think about that point where you're going to retire or that you're going to stop, and what will you have achieved? And so as you look at your career and you're thinking about your next steps, think about it in that way. And yeah, definitely reach out to your network, make sure that you know what's going on, look at the skills that you might need to acquire. So as in between looking for a role, which is a full-time job within itself, also think about online training that's been free at the moment. That you can do that can help you just build up your skills. And think about flexible working, part-time, full-time, interim.
Okay, good. And also, guys, the gig economy is super big. So, build a profile on people per hour, on Fiverr, on Upwork, for your skills. People are out there looking for very niche skills right now, right? So don't think that is only for the graphic designers and all that kind of stuff. If you can do research and write reports, do that, etc. Dennis, one question that came in, which I thought was very important to ask, is someone says that they're extremely anxious about going out and just terrified about the whole situation, and says, what advice can you give to deal with, and they suffer from anxiety attacks because of that, and they're just asking, what advice can you give to deal with this level of anxiety or deal with these anxiety attacks?
Well, I think the first thing is to remember that you're not doing this alone. I mean, if I think about all the challenges that I've ever had in my life, I've never been able to overcome them without the help and support of other people in my life. So I think to call upon for support, and I think that can be challenging when we've been raised as male children to, where we're supposed to be self-reliant and all-powerful. I think that can be a challenge, but I think it's really important. So if it was me in your shoes, I would seek that support and see how I can move forward with that help and support. And I think isolating yourself at home is definitely not a way forward. And anything you can do to support yourself to get out there, because one of the things I tell myself when I hear the word fear a lot is this acronym, false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. And the reason why I say that is that because I know that every single fear that I have ever confronted in all of my life has never, ever, not once been anything like the fantasy I conjured up in my own mind. And that's why I believe in that acronym. I think fear is a very powerful emotion, and don't get me wrong, it can help save our lives, but it can also get in the way of us being able to live our lives fully. And so, yeah. Okay. There are a couple of things I think that might be helpful.
Good. Thanks for that. So, guys, I know we're coming close to the hour. I'd just like to open up if there's anyone on the call right now that has any questions for any member of the panelists. Yes, we're going to drop Dennis's. Dennis, is it okay for us to drop your email address in the?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, more than happy. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Just let us know and we'll unmute you. All right. So let me go to another question that was asked then. So Kayus, I think this is probably similar to what you have been talking about. What are you currently investing your money in that you feel most passionate about, and why?
I'm investing money in myself. No, I say that jokingly, but I'm investing money in my business, really, and as you know, it's all about helping people who don't necessarily have access to or haven't had financial education over the course of their lives. That's what I'm doing is putting my time and my resources into that, because I think as a community, we are best served by building up our own resources, our own economic strength. And that really just starts with education, man. And I just feel like we are dealt such a poor hand when it comes to that. So I am doing as much as possible to, to invest my time and resources. Other than that, I'm continuing to do what I've always done, which is invest in the markets, and to be consistent with that approach as well, because I think it's a lifelong endeavor that is very worthwhile. I'm not really kind of looking at anything sort of out of the box at the moment. You know, real estate is always something that is quite interesting, but it's just really difficult to say how things are going to develop over the next months and years. But again, like I say in my course, it's a question of you deciding what future you want for yourself and not being swayed too much by what's going on in the external environment. So I think really staying the course, getting clued up, investing in yourself, in your education, and your awareness is what I would advise.
Yeah. And once again, guys, for those of you who joined late, Kayus runs a really good financial planning and investment masterclass once a week. His details are down below. I'm part of that masterclass, and I've learned so much, in terms of personal financial planning and wealth building skills, that I'd really recommend those of us here to kind of check that out. And it's one of the reasons why we have Blay Coins as well, because we believe strongly in the economic empowerment of Black gay men, and to create the knowledge and the space and the collective for us to support each other along this journey. Right, so I think one final question that came in, which I think it's really good for us to close off with, is just to kind of wrap up, what for all three, what would you think, and I'll probably start off with Geoffrey, what would be your top tip in dealing with the new normal, or coming out of this situation? What would be your one tip, whatever that is for you?
Gosh, one tip. I guess it's a simple one, really. Remain positive. I think that, change is good. So remain positive.
Okay, good. Kayus?
My tip would be to play to your strengths. We all have a lot of value. We have a lot of experience that we sometimes discount, but we have a lot to give to the world, to our communities, and more than ever, we need to come out of our shells and share and say, look, I'm great at doing this thing, and I want to share it with the world. So play to your strengths, and yeah, that would be my tip.
Geoffrey, just before I go to Dennis, someone asked about if you offer services in coaching for career development and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that kind of stuff that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I offer services in career development. Basically, I'll work with you to think about your plans for the future, how you build them, and how you get to ask for what you want within your career, whether that's within the organization that you work for or within yourself and the skills that you need to build to do that. So I think my email's in one of the messages that's gone out. Drop me a note if you're interested. Okay,
cool. And Dennis, what would be as a therapist on the panel, what would be some of the tips that you think we need to kind of be thinking about as we transition into this new normal?
Well, I totally agree with Geoffrey when he talks about being positive and staying positive. I think for me, what's important is to surround myself with people who are positive thinking, and to avoid those that are kind of energy sappers and energy killers. I think stay well away from them. I think if you can expand your network to include more positive thinking people in your world, I think that will be an incredibly sensible thing to do going forward, because I think there will be a lot of negativity going forward, and I think it's important to try and avoid that at all costs, actually. And if I think about my own kind of health and well-being, I know that I wouldn't have been able to do it without the love and support of those around me. And for me, it's important to always remember that. So anything I can do to bolster a positive environment. So even in my own space, you know, I make sure that I don't take down pictures of men kissing each other or try and make my space a kind of heteronormative space. Far from it. I think when I look around and wake up in the morning, I want to see positive images of myself. And so it's important to surround myself with those images as much as possible. Because out there in the big world, they're not there. And because they're not there, I can feel invisible. But by making myself visible in my own space and with the people that I am close to and who mean something to me, can only be a good thing. Okay,
brilliant. All right, thank you so much to Kayus, Geoffrey, and Dennis. Some very good words of wisdom. We're going to be summarizing this, and this was recorded as well. So we're going to also make it available for those of you who are on the call. You could rewatch it. You can get the tips as well. And when we do that, we will also provide the links that we spoke about, the TEDx link, the link to Kayus's stuff, to Geoffrey, and to Dennis as well, so people can reach out. I think it was you know, a phenomenal discussion, to be honest with you. I'm going to hand back over to Nala to kind of close out the session for us.
Can I say one quick word before we do that? I just want to thank you, Romeo, Nala, Nzube, all the other organizers for pulling this together. Looking at this screen, I think it's one of the only times in recent times that I've seen Black men all together on the screen. And I can just say to you, it's just so reassuring and nice to see that.
Yes,
you know, I wish going to my barber, you know, growing up as a kid was like this, where it just felt safe as a bunch of Black men with taking care of each other. You know, I think it's such a great thing to have, and I'm really glad that you've taken the trouble, gone to the trouble to do this. So thanks for inviting me and for doing this.
No problem. Thank you very much. And guys, just look out for because we're trying to do this once a month. So just keep looking out for the invites from the Blay Collective. It's all about economic and career growth and development that we focus on. Nala, over to you.
Yeah, so just want to say thank you again. Make sure you've got the Blackout Hub. That's where everything will get posted, as well as a link to the video so that you can share it with anyone who missed out today. And also just to say that we want to carry on the conversation as well. So if you had any further questions that you want to ask, then just post them on the hub and we'll be able to get back to you through that as well. It's called the Blackout Hub and it's available on Play Store and on the App Store as well for iPhone users. So thanks again to our amazing speakers today, and thank you all for joining.
Brilliant. Have a great rest of the weekend, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, thank you.